In the world of darkness, every human being has a single spark of potential. We humans come into the world with open eyes, and then we take our first breaths and begin to close those eyes and scream. Most people never open their eyes again after that, or when they do, they see only what they want to see, what they're told to see. But some people take that first breath and then wake up. Hello, and welcome to another lore video on Mage the Ascension. In the last video, we talked about a mage's awakening, and in this video, we'll talk about the fragile path each mage must walk upon. The fragile path of being a mage involves 3 steps: awareness, conflict, and resolution. Each awakened one follows some variation on these steps, and while some mages live for centuries, others blow themselves to smithereens within a week or so of awakening. Once a mage has awakened, they become aware. Their world becomes bigger, brimming with possibilities. Sensations become more vivid. The avatar, the portion of an individual's soul which is the source of a mage's ability to perform magic, becomes a consistent presence. Things no longer seem random, but appear to follow a greater design. Awareness shows a mage their place in that design and how to work with it. So how exactly does a mage begin to navigate this fragile path? Well, most awakened ones start by finding a mentor. Instruction is essential for mages. Without it, they become hazards to themselves and everyone in sight. Instruction can take many forms: an elder mage, a guiding spirit, book research, a coven, a fellowship, or an indoctrination program. Sometimes, in societies that acknowledge the existence of magic, budding mages are sent off on apprenticeships, given to convents and cloisters, or initiated into secret societies. There, experienced awakened mentors give them training and expertise. Magical instruction isn't always obvious. The Technocratic Union, a faction we will discuss in greater detail in future parts, refuses to call what it does magic. Instead, a technocratic initiate gets invited or strong-armed into a self-improvement program that indoctrinates them in the technocratic way. Other groups follow cultural lines with vision quests and ordeals and holy orders and so forth. Just like with an avatar, the form isn't important. The function of it is. However it is done, mentors take responsibility for the people in their care. In exchange for sharing their experience, they expect a certain amount of loyalty. Some demand apprenticeship oaths, while others just expect respect. Ideally, a mentor teaches the new mage to use their powers well. A mentor passes on the tools, beliefs, and secrets of their trade, and though the student may eventually leave them behind, these magical training wheels provide a focus for the mage's innate potential. Through them, talent becomes skill, and awareness becomes art. The next inevitable step on the path, conflict, often begins with the mentor-student relationship, however, because the thing is, most folks don't like being told what to do. If orders go against their morals, well, they rebel. Peace never lasts. Awakened ones are mortals and therefore creatures of conflict. Many are emotional and intellectual. A few are philosophical. Quite often, they get physical too. That bright spark of awareness eventually becomes a flame, and then, sometimes, mages burn. Sometimes the conflict starts immediately with a traumatic awakening that blasts the mage's world wide open. If a new or potential awakening goes down that way, mage factions can send retrieval agents out to collect the new recruit, either for training or disposal. These teams, if they cross paths with one another, often fight as well. Turf wars can erupt over a single mage, especially if that person seems unusually gifted. Disappearances, shootouts, gang wars, and ritual murders are facts of life in the awakened world. Rival factions can, and will, capture, convert, or destroy a newly awakened mage and everyone around them if that keeps another faction from getting to them first. Enlightened as mages claim to be, they have an ever-increasing list of things to fight about. Of course, other mages aren't the only ones a part of the conflict. Vampires, werewolves, furious ghosts, and treacherous fairies present serious threats to awakened ones. Though their forms of magic are more limited than a mage's own, such creatures tend to be bigger, stronger, and tougher. A mage who gets in a werewolf's way will likely not survive, while one who deals with vampires can lose everything that made them magical. A vampire's kiss, for a mage, can bring about a fate far worse than death. There's also a mage's fellow mortals, the sleepers, to be worried about. In an era filled with smartphones, social media, SWAT teams, and tanks, a mage needs to be more careful than ever. Mortal governments have secret agencies that deal with paranormal threats. Cops, priests, special agents, journalists, counselors, witch hunters, and the occasional assassin gets dispatched when a mage acts too free and obvious with their art. The mortal world's most potent weapon against awakened ones, though, and perhaps the greatest challenge to any mage, involves the weight and inertia of reality itself, which we will discuss in detail in future parts. Then there's the conflict within a mage. As mages reach further into Magick's realm, it's harder to retain a sense of humanity. With all an awakened one can do, a certain impatience with the rest of the world sets in. Moving through the sleeper's world can be difficult since magic doesn't work right when people can't accept its possibilities. A suffocating weight of disbelief can handicap an awakened one, and so mages often feel as if the sleepers are forcing them down or holding them back. It's hard for a mage to love or even tolerate people who cannot and will not understand their reality. The added strain of secrecy and fear erodes those bonds as well. It's easy for a mage to get hung up in such conflicts, especially when avoiding them. And so, mages can also become stagnant. Stagnant with a lust for power, stagnant in solitude, stagnant in self-indulgence, hatred, or despair. Mages can get so wrapped up in conflicts or avoidance that they stop growing. So after a mage finds mentorship and faces the obstacles on the fragile path, where does it lead from there? Well, it leads to resolution, the eventual end of the road. Whatever form it takes, mages all reach it eventually, for good or for ill. The resolution for some awakened ones is that they wind up corrupted by their own power. The Nefandi, a sect of fallen mages we will discuss in more detail in future parts, even choose to become corrupted. And in some ways it makes sense. The greatest form of corruption on the fragile path comes from within. Hubris, the fatal pride that leads to destruction, and Magick make an awful combination. As I've said before, all mages are heroic monsters. Occasionally, an awakened one just snaps, and when a mage snaps, they enter quiet, a magical delusion that distorts a mage's view of reality. A mage's will flips inside out and traps the mage inside. Certain types of quiet can produce fearsome mania, a potent sense of denial, strange delusions, or an obsessive affinity with death. Entering quiet can even trap an awakened one in a self-made prison, leaving their body catatonic. Some mages come back from quiets quickly. Others take their time getting back, and some never come back at all. Other terrible resolutions include imprisonment. Mages and other entities have ways of dealing with their foes. Some craft cages out of impossible materials, and others conceal an awakened one in a bubble and send them into space. Then there's slavery. Pacts, bargains, obligations, and the vampiric blood bond can turn mages into slaves. Even worse, enslaved mages may not ever recognize those chains. The obvious resolution is, of course, that death waits for every mage. An awakened one can cheat it for centuries, but they are, after all, mortal. Every so often, a mage doesn't experience physical death, but rather the death of one's soul, which puts a permanent end to their magic and cycles them back to being a sleeper. But not all endings are terrible. Some mages achieve great prosperity without becoming monsters, and then become beacons in the world of darkness. Prosperity can be selfish, but ideally a prosperous mage shares their good fortune with the community at large. There have been awakened ones who have ended famines, stopped wars, and brought new technologies or faiths to the people. However, in order to do the greatest good, some mages give up their most precious things, even their lives, in order to achieve a greater end. A mage can even achieve a transformation or a rebirth, where the awakened one brings themselves to some new enlightened state. But perhaps the highest goal of any mage is transcendence. Reaching this stage, a mage lets go of everything that binds them to the mortal plane. Pride dissipates, and the paradox of being both human and divine evaporates. This stage transcends definition. It simply is. If a mage has to try to understand it, they haven't reached it yet. In the next Mage the Ascension lore video, we'll go more in depth into a mage's art of magic. Remember, awakened ones, reality is what you make of it.